The Galactic Council chamber was filled with a tense silence as the alien leaders faced an unprecedented crisis. For centuries, their coalition of advanced civilizations had maintained an era of peace and prosperity throughout the known galaxy. But now, that fragile balance was on the verge of collapse. An ancient enemy, long thought defeated, had reemerged from the shadows. This new foe possessed a savagery and cunning that caught the Council's armies off guard. Despite their technological superiority, the Council's military forces were simply no match for the sheer brutality of their adversaries. As the battles raged on, the death toll mounted, and the Council found itself pushed to the brink of defeat. Desperate for a solution, the leaders convened an emergency session, their faces etched with worry. "We must consider all options," said Counselor Orcs, his tentacles writhing with tension. "Our conventional forces are being decimated. If we do not find a way to turn the tide, the entire galaxy may fall under the control of our ancient enemies." The other counselors nodded solemnly, their eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. They had tried every military strategy, every technological advancement at their disposal, but none seemed capable of overcoming the relentless onslaught. "There is one final option we have not explored," said Counselor Villara, her voice hesitant. "It is a desperate measure, one that goes against our better judgment. But I fear we may have no other choice." The room fell silent as the counselors turned their attention to Villara, waiting for her to continue. "We must contact the Deathworlders," she said, her words carrying a weight that made the others shift uncomfortably in their seats. The Deathworlders were a legendary species, hailing from a planet with extreme environmental conditions that were essentially uninhabitable to most other life forms. Rumors of their unparalleled physical and mental capabilities, their ferocity in battle, and their disregard for their own safety had long circulated throughout the galaxy. But the Galactic Council had always been wary of these mysterious humans, preferring to maintain a safe distance rather than risk their wrath. "Villara, you cannot be serious," Counselor Orcs exclaimed, his tentacles flailing in agitation. "The Deathworlders are savage, unpredictable creatures. Reaching out to them could spell the end of our civilization." "I understand your concerns, Orcs," Villara replied, her voice steady. "But we are running out of options. Our armies are being decimated, and the enemy shows no signs of relenting. If we do not act now, we may lose everything we have worked so hard to build." The other counselors exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing with the implications of such a drastic measure. The Deathworlders were a wild card, a force of nature that could not be easily controlled or predicted. But the alternative, the complete annihilation of the Galactic Council, was a fate too grim to consider. After a long, tense silence, Counselor Orcs sighed heavily. "Very well," he conceded, his tone resigned. "If we are truly at wit's end, then we must call upon the Deathworlders for aid. But I warn you, Villara, the consequences of this decision may be more than we can bear." Villara nodded solemnly. "I understand the risks, Orcs, but we have no choice. The fate of the galaxy rests on our ability to find a way to defeat our ancient enemy. If the Deathworlders are our only hope, then so be it." With a heavy heart, the Galactic Council initiated the process of contacting the legendary Deathworlders, their minds filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The future of their civilization hung in the balance, and they could only pray that the humans would answer their desperate plea. As the communication channels were opened, the counselors sat in silence, their thoughts consumed by the uncertainty that lay ahead. They knew that the arrival of the Deathworlders could change the course of the galaxy forever, for better or for worse. But with no other options left, they had no choice but to take the leap into the unknown. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with a palpable sense of anticipation as the alien leaders waited for the Deathworlders' arrival. After sending out their desperate plea for help, they had not known what to expect. Would the legendary humans even respond to their call? And if they did, would they be willing to lend their aid in the Council's time of need? The minutes ticked by in agonizing silence, the counselors fidgeting nervously in their seats, their eyes fixed on the central communication hub. Suddenly, a bright flash of light filled the room, and a lone figure materialized before them. The Deathworlder was a striking individual, his muscular frame and steely gaze immediately commanding the attention of the assembled aliens. He wore a simple, practical outfit, devoid of any ornamental flourishes, and his movements were fluid and precise, exuding an aura of quiet confidence. For a moment, the counselors sat in stunned silence, unsure of how to proceed. They had heard the stories, the tales of the Deathworlder's ferocity and unpredictability, and they found themselves unsure of how to approach this enigmatic figure. Finally, Counselor Villara rose from her seat, her expression a mix of trepidation and hope. "Welcome, Deathworlder," she said, her voice measured and diplomatic. "We are grateful that you have answered our call for aid." The Deathworlder's gaze swept across the room, his piercing eyes studying each counselor in turn. "I am called Alex," he said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "You have summoned me to your aid. What is it that you require?" Villara exchanged a glance with the other counselors, and then took a deep breath. "As you may be aware, our Galactic Council is facing a grave crisis. An ancient enemy has reemerged, and our armies have been unable to turn the tide of the conflict. We are in desperate need of your assistance, Deathworlder." Alex's expression remained impassive as he listened to Villara's explanation. "I see," he said simply, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And what makes you believe that I, a mere human, can make a difference in your war?" The counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, uncertain of how to respond. They had heard the tales of the Deathworlder's prowess, but they were unsure of how to convince this individual to lend his aid. Counselor Orcs, his tentacles twitching with nervousness, spoke up. "Deathworlder, we have heard the stories of your kind, of your unparalleled strength, your fearlessness in battle, and your strategic brilliance. If anyone can help us turn the tide of this war, it is you." Alex's gaze narrowed further, and for a moment, the counselors held their breath, wondering if they had overstepped their bounds. But then, to their surprise, the Deathworlder let out a low chuckle. "Very well," he said, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I will lend my aid to your Galactic Council, but on one condition, that you do not underestimate the power of a Deathworlder." The counselors exchanged relieved glances, their shoulders sagging with a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. They knew that they were placing their trust in a force that they could not fully comprehend, but at this point, they had no other choice. "Agreed," Villara said, inclining her head slightly. "We will heed your advice, Deathworlder, and do our utmost to support your efforts." Alex nodded, his gaze sweeping across the room once more. "Then let us begin," he said, his voice taking on a steely edge. "Show me the extent of this enemy's power, and I will show you how to defeat them." With those words, the Deathworlder turned and strode towards the central command station, his every move exuding a sense of purpose and determination. The counselors followed, their hearts filled with a renewed sense of hope and a touch of apprehension for what was to come. As the Deathworlder named Alex pored over the tactical displays and battle reports, the Galactic Council counselors watched with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The human's keen eye and incisive analysis quickly revealed weaknesses in their current strategies, exposing gaps that the enemy had exploited with devastating effect. "Your forces are predictable," Alex said bluntly, his gaze fixed on the holographic projections. "They move in rigid formations, relying too heavily on technology and firepower. Your enemy, however, is adaptable, using unconventional tactics to overcome your numerical and technological advantages." The counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their pride stinging at the Deathworlder's frank assessment. But they could not deny the truth in his words. Their armies had been consistently outmaneuvered and outmatched by this formidable foe. "Then what do you propose we do, Deathworlder?" Counselor Orcs asked, his tentacles twitching with unease. Alex turned his piercing gaze towards the alien leader, his expression unreadable. "You must be willing to adapt," he said, his voice firm. "Abandon your rigid strategies and embrace a more flexible approach. Your enemy thrives on predictability. We must use that against them." The other counselors exchanged uncertain glances, their faces etched with doubt. Adapting their tried and true military tactics was a daunting prospect, one that challenged the very foundations of their civilization's approach to warfare. "But how can we be certain that your methods will be effective?" Counselor Villara asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Our forces have trained for generations to fight in a certain way. To change now, in the midst of such a critical conflict, could be disastrous." Alex's lips curved into a slight smile, and he shook his head slowly. "You have no other choice," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "If you continue to fight as you have been, you will be defeated. The Deathworlders have faced similar challenges, and we have prevailed through adaptation and innovation." Sensing the counselor's hesitation, Alex stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice softening ever so slightly. "But you have summoned me here because you recognize that your current strategies are failing. If you truly wish to prevail, you must be willing to trust in my methods, even if they go against your established norms." The counselors fell silent, their minds racing as they weighed the Deathworlder's words. They knew that Alex spoke the truth. Their armies were being decimated, and their traditional tactics had proven ineffective against this formidable enemy. But to place their trust in a human, a being from a world they knew so little about, was a daunting prospect. After a long, tense silence, Counselor Villara stood, her expression resolute. "Very well, Deathworlder," she said, her voice steady. "We will heed your advice and implement the changes you deem necessary. But know this, if your methods fail, the consequences will be dire, not only for us, but for the entire galaxy." Alex inclined his head in acknowledgement, his eyes gleaming with a hint of challenge. "I understand," he said, his tone brooking no further argument. "Then let us begin the work of reshaping your forces. Time is of the essence, and we cannot afford any further delays." With that, the Deathworlder turned and strode towards the central command station, his every move radiating a sense of purpose and confidence. The counselors watched him go, their faces reflecting a mixture of hope and trepidation. They had placed their trust in this mysterious human, and now the fate of the galaxy rested on their willingness to adapt and embrace his unorthodox strategies. As the Deathworlder began to work, the counselors found themselves drawn into his orbit, their own preconceptions and biases slowly giving way to a newfound respect for this human's tactical brilliance. And in that moment, the foundations of an unlikely alliance began to take shape, one that would be tested by the trials to come. As the Galactic Council's forces mobilize, under the guidance of the Deathworlder named Alex, a sense of cautious optimism began to take root. The alien soldiers, once rigid and predictable in their tactics, now moved with a newfound fluidity and adaptability, responding to the ever-changing battlefield conditions with a level of coordination that had been previously unimaginable. Alex, his piercing gaze fixed on the holographic displays, barked orders in a calm, measured tone, his words cutting through the chaos of the impending battle. The counselors, once skeptical of his unorthodox methods, now found themselves in awe of his strategic brilliance as they witnessed the enemy's advance being steadily pushed back. "Their formations are too tightly packed," Alex said, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Concentrate your firepower on the flanks and use your mobility to outmaneuver them. Cut off their supply lines and leave them exposed." The alien commanders, their confidence bolstered by the Deathworlder's guidance, executed the plan with precision, their forces surging forward in a coordinated assault. The enemy, caught off guard by the unexpected tactics, struggled to respond, their own rigid formations becoming a liability as they were outflanked and outmaneuvered. The battle raged on for hours, the clash of energy weapons and the roar of engines echoing through the void of space. But as the dust settled, It became clear that the Galactic Council's forces had gained the upper hand, thanks to the Deathworlder's unorthodox approach. Councillor Villara, her eyes shining with relief and awe, approached Alex, her tentacles extending in a gesture of gratitude. "Your methods have proven effective, Deathworlder," she said, her voice tinged with wonder. "We are in your debt." Alex's expression remained impassive, but a hint of satisfaction flickered in his gaze. "The battle is not yet won," he said, his tone pragmatic. "Our enemy is resourceful and resilient. We must be prepared for their counterattack." The counselors nodded, their faces reflecting a renewed sense of determination. They had witnessed the power of the Deathworlder's tactics, and they were now more than willing to heed his guidance, even if it continued to challenge their preconceived notions of warfare. As the Council's forces regrouped and reinforced their positions, Alex turned his attention to the next phase of the plan, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. He knew that the enemy would not give up easily, and that the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity, as the Deathworlder and the Counselors worked in tandem to outmaneuver and outmanipulate their foe. Alex's unorthodox tactics, combined with the aliens' technological prowess, proved to be a formidable combination, chipping away at the enemy's defenses and exposing their vulnerabilities. But the enemy was not without their own surprises, and as the battle reached its climax, the Galactic Council forces found themselves facing a devastating counterattack. Caught off guard, they struggled to regain their footing, their morale wavering in the face of the relentless onslaught. It was then that the Deathworlder's true mettle was put to the test. Stepping to the forefront of the battle, Alex rallied the alien troops, his voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon of hope. With a series of lightning-fast maneuvers and audacious tactical decisions, he turned the tide of the battle, pushing the enemy back and preventing the Council's forces from being overrun. As the dust settled and the enemy forces retreated, the Galactic Counselors stood in awe, their eyes fixed on the Deathworlder. In that moment, they realized that they had placed their trust in a true warrior, a tactician whose abilities far exceeded anything they had ever imagined. "You have saved us, Deathworlder," Counselor Villara said, her voice trembling with emotion. "The galaxy owes you a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid." Alex simply nodded, his expression revealing a glimmer of satisfaction. "The battle is not over," he said, his gaze sweeping across the devastated battlefield. "We must prepare for the enemy's next move. The fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance." With those words, the Deathworlder turned and strode back towards the command center, his every step radiating a sense of purpose and determination. The Counselors followed, their minds racing with the implications of what they had witnessed, a human who had single-handedly turned the tide of a war that had seemed all but lost. As the dust settled from the latest clash with the enemy, the Deathworlder named Alex found himself in deep contemplation. Something about the battle had seemed off, a nagging feeling that there was more to the conflict than met the eye. Retreating to the Galactic Council's command center, Alex pored over the battle reports and intelligence data, his keen eyes scanning for any discrepancies or anomalies. The Counselors, sensing his unease, approached him cautiously, their tentacles twitching with uncertainty. "What troubles you, Deathworlder?" Counselor Villara asked, her voice laced with concern. "Our forces were victorious once again, thanks to your leadership." Alex turned to face the Counselor, his expression grave. "Something is not right," he said, his words measured and deliberate. "The enemy's tactics, their deployment of resources, it does not align with the information we have on them." Villara's eyes widened, and she exchanged a worried glance with the other Counselors. "What are you suggesting, Alex?" The Deathworlder's gaze hardened, and he leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the console. "I believe there is a traitor within the Galactic Council," he said, his voice stern. "Someone who is feeding our enemy vital intelligence and undermining our efforts." The Counselors recoiled, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. The very idea of a traitor in their midst was unthinkable, a betrayal that threatened to shatter the foundation of their coalition. "That cannot be," Councillor Oryx exclaimed, his tentacles flailing in agitation. "We are the guardians of peace and unity in the galaxy. How could one of us betray that trust?" Alex's expression remained impassive, but a glimmer of determination shone in his eyes. "That is what I intend to find out," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I will not rest until I uncover the truth, no matter where it leads." Vilara, her initial shock giving way to a resolute determination, nodded in agreement. "Then you have our full cooperation, Deathworlder. We will provide you with all the resources and access you require to conduct your investigation." The other counselors, sensing the gravity of the situation, reluctantly agreed, their faces etched with a mix of apprehension and resolve. They knew that the revelation of a traitor within their ranks would shatter the fragile trust that had been built, but they also recognized the necessity of rooting out the source of the leaks. As Alex delved into the investigation, sifting through records and communication logs, the counselors found themselves grappling with a growing sense of unease. The evidence he uncovered was damning, pointing towards a web of deceit and betrayal that reached deep into the heart of the Galactic Council itself. The realization that one of their own had betrayed them was a bitter pill to swallow, and the counselors found themselves consumed by a range of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a deep sense of disillusionment. Alex, however, remained steadfast in his pursuit of the truth, his determination fueled by a need to protect the galaxy from the consequences of this treachery. As he pieced together the puzzle, a startling revelation came to light. The enemy's origins were not what they had been led to believe. The Deathworlder's discovery sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council, shattering their long-held assumptions and forcing them to confront the unsettling reality that the very foundations of their coalition were built on a foundation of lies and deception. Torn between the need to maintain unity and the imperative to uncover the truth, the counselors found themselves at a crossroads, their loyalty and principles tested like never before. And as they turned to Alex for guidance, they knew that the choices they made in the coming days would shape the future of the galaxy for generations to come. The Galactic Council's forces, led by the indomitable Deathworlder named Alex, made their final push to neutralize the enemy's stronghold. The stakes had never been higher, for the revelation of the traitor within their ranks had shaken the foundation of their coalition, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust among the alien races. Yet, despite the turmoil and uncertainty, the counselors found themselves united in a common purpose: to vanquish the ancient enemy that threatened to tear the galaxy apart. And with Alex's unwavering leadership guiding their strategy, they were determined to emerge victorious. The battle that ensued was brutal and unforgiving, as the enemy unleashed their most devastating weapons and tactics in a desperate bid to turn the tide. Explosions rocked the void of space, and the air crackled with the deafening roar of energy beams and projectiles. Alex, his keen eyes scanning the battlefield, barked out orders with the precision of a master tactician. The alien forces, once hesitant and rigid, now moved with a fluidity and coordination that belied their years of training under the Deathworlder's guidance. As the battle raged on, the Galactic Council's troops pushed forward, their resolve hardened by the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. They fought with a ferocity and determination that took the enemy by surprise, chipping away at their defenses and exposing their vulnerabilities. But the enemy was not without their own surprising countermeasures, and as the battle reached its crescendo, the Council's forces found themselves facing a relentless onslaught that threatened to overwhelm them. Casualties mounted, and the counselors watched with growing trepidation, their faces etched with worry. It was then that Alex, his expression grim but unwavering, stepped forward, his presence commanding the attention of both armies. With a series of lightning-fast maneuvers and audacious tactics, he turned the tide of the battle, rallying the Council's troops and driving the enemy back with a ferocity that left their foes reeling. The counselors, awed by the Deathworlder's display of skill and raw power, found themselves inspired by his unwavering determination. They redoubled their efforts, pouring every ounce of their resources and technological prowess into the final push to destroy the enemy's stronghold. The battle raged on for hours, the sound of weaponry and the cries of the wounded echoing through the void. But as the dust settled, the Galactic Council's forces emerged victorious, their flag flying high over the shattered remains of the enemy's base. Counselor Villara, her tentacles trembling with a mixture of relief and pride, approached Alex, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You have saved us, Deathworlder," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "The galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid." Alex's expression remained impassive, but a glimmer of satisfaction flickered in his gaze. "The battle is won," he said, his tone measured. "But the war is not over. The traitor within your ranks still remains, and we must root them out before they can do further harm." Villara's expression darkened, and she nodded solemnly. "You are right, Alex. Our victory is bittersweet, for we must now confront the betrayal that has shaken the very foundations of the Galactic Council." The other counselors, their faces grim, gathered around their human ally, their determination renewed by the knowledge that their work was not yet done. They had faced the enemy's might and prevailed, but the true test lay in uncovering the traitor and restoring the trust that had been so cruelly shattered. As they turned their attention to the next phase of their mission, the counselors knew that they were forever changed by the events that had unfolded. The Deathworlder, Alex, had proven himself to be a force to be reckoned with, a warrior whose skills and strategic brilliance had been essential in their triumph. And as they prepared to confront the traitor, they were acutely aware that Alex's role in the future of the galaxy would be pivotal, a fact that both filled them with hope and a sense of trepidation, for they knew that the decisions they made in the days to come would shape the destiny of their civilization for generations to come. The aftermath of the Galactic Council's victory over their ancient enemy was bittersweet, tinged with a sense of unease and uncertainty. While the alien races celebrated their hard-won triumph, they could not shake the unsettling knowledge that a traitor had been in their midst, undermining their efforts and nearly leading them to ruin. Counselor Villara, her tentacles still trembling with the weight of the revelations, turned to the Deathworlder named Alex, her expression etched with a mix of gratitude and apprehension. "Alex," she said, her voice measured, "you have done more for us than we could have ever imagined. Without your leadership and strategic brilliance, we would have surely fallen to our enemy. But now we face an even greater challenge, rooting out the one who has betrayed us from within." Alex's gaze was steady, his expression impassive. "The task will not be an easy one," he said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. "The traitor has had ample time to cover their tracks, and they undoubtedly possess resources and connections that will make them difficult to uncover." The other counselors nodded solemnly, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. They had trusted one of their own, and that trust had been shattered in the most devastating of ways. The thought of having to rebuild that foundation of unity and cooperation weighed heavily on their minds. "We must proceed with caution," Counselor Orcs said, his tentacles twitching with unease. "We cannot afford to make any missteps, lest the traitor escape or worse, continue their undermining efforts." Alex inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Then we shall work together, the Deathworlders and the Galactic Council, to uncover the truth and bring the traitor to justice." The counselors exchanged a series of glances, their expressions reflecting a newfound respect and trust in the human warrior. They had once been wary of the Deathworlders, but now they recognized the immense value that Alex and his kind could bring to their coalition. As the investigation into the traitor's identity unfolded, the Galactic Council's forces found themselves drawn ever closer to their human allies. The Deathworlders, with their unwavering determination and unorthodox tactics, proved to be invaluable assets in the pursuit of the truth. And in the end, it was the Deathworlders' relentless efforts, coupled with the Galactic Council's technological prowess, that led to the discovery and apprehension of the traitor, a high-ranking member of the Council whose ambition and greed had blinded them to the greater good of the galaxy. The revelation shook the Galactic Council to its core, but it also served to strengthen the bonds between the alien races and their newfound Deathworlder allies. In the aftermath of the crisis, the Council underwent a profound transformation, shedding its rigid structures and embracing a more flexible, collaborative approach to governance. Alex, his legend growing with each passing day, became a revered figure among the alien races, his name spoken with a mix of awe and respect. The Deathworlders, once viewed with suspicion, were now sought out for their strategic brilliance and unwavering loyalty, their services in high demand as the Galactic Council looked to the future. As the galaxy began to heal from the wounds of the conflict, the counselors found themselves reflecting on the pivotal role that the Deathworlders had played in their salvation. They knew that without Alex's intervention, the Galactic Council might have crumbled, and the galaxy would have fallen under the control of their ancient enemy. The Deathworlders have earned our trust and our respect, Valera said, her voice carrying a newfound conviction. Their ways may be different from ours, but their dedication to the greater good is unparalleled. We would be wise to continue to seek their counsel and their aid, for the challenges that lie ahead may be even greater than those we have faced. The other counselors nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting a sense of renewed purpose and determination. As they turned their attention to the task of rebuilding and strengthening the Galactic Council, they knew that the Deathworlders would be there to support them, their unwavering presence a testament to the power of unlikely alliances and the enduring strength of the galaxy's defenders.